Oh, I'm Jack, actually John Howard Sodergren. I was called early Jack as a nickname for John, which most people know, except here in Virginia, where they don't know that Jack was a nickname for John. 1933, basically at the height of the Depression. My mother's name was Marguerite Ruth Hood. My dad was Howard Leander Sodergren, which is an old Swedish name. My birth certificate says that my mother was unemployed, my father was unemployed candy maker, whatever that means. It means that my mother was pregnant and senior in high school, and my father was unemployed and got caught. So it was tough years, and during the Depression, of course I don't remember a lot of it. I was too young, but I know later on, before the Second World War started, things were not all that good. Don't recall actually going hungry during that period of time, but foods were pretty basic and whatever you could get. I was born in Minneapolis, North Minneapolis. My dad worked for a company called C. Thomas Stores, which was a chain of supermarkets across the Midwest. That was later on, of course. I went to grade school and failed the first year when I got transferred because the two schools didn't have the same academic system, and partly because I was just plain stupid in those years. But my siblings, my brothers came much later. My older brother, the older of the younger brothers, was born in 1941, and he was born just before the war, April, as a matter of fact, April 11th of 1941. So the war at that time was somewhere in the future. I think everyone knew it was coming, but 41, I was only, 8 years old. So I do remember, I remember Pearl Harbor. I remember that Sunday morning and how it affected people. The world changed after that. It was a time for an 8-year-old. It was kind of dreamlike. We didn't see we didn't have any television, of course, but your newsreels and the movies gave us pretty good indication, and newspapers gave us indication of what was going on in the world. And in 1940, early 44, my dad went into the Navy, and he enlisted because he was told that married men with 2 children were going to be drafted, because we were in dire straits, early 44. And so my dad enlisted, and 2 weeks later they called off to draft for 34-year-olds. and of course he had already been in the Navy, and he really wanted to go anyways, even though he had a wife and a family. And he spent 2.5 years in the South Pacific. He didn't even get back from the overseas until March of 1946, which was long after 7 months after the war ended. When he was gone, it was a difficult situation. Difficult all the way around. My mother had problems, and we ended up being shuttled from one home to another. My mother eventually, later on, lost my 2 brothers to foster homes. I ended up living with my aunt and uncle, and basically spent those years with my aunt and uncle, and then got together with my dad much later. And it was some difficult times. It wasn't fun. I ended up my last years with my dad. I was a senior in high school, and I actually quit my senior year because I didn't have enough money for all of the parties and the celebrations and the rings and all of this stuff. And I knew my dad didn't, because he didn't pay that much, and besides he was drinking at the time too. So it was not a question of, it was a question of self-preservation basically. And I joined the Navy to find a home and get 3 squares a day and, you know, have something. And by that time too, it was only 3 months after Korea broke out, and a lot of my friends were going. So I enlisted in December of 1950, but actually I went in the service 1951, January 51. I went to Great Lakes, Illinois. Okay, so and that's how I got in the Navy. I had been living with my aunt and uncle, and my dad and mother got separated. My 2 brothers ended up in foster homes, and this resulted in my not seeing my youngest brother from the time he was, I think he was 5 years old until he was 16. I didn't see him, except during one leave I had during the service, and I got together with him then. But otherwise, until he was 16, I didn't see him. My other brother, oftentimes I'd see him, but that was it. I mean, that was it as far as the Navy is concerned. Just before I got out, of course, I married my wife. I got shore duty in Puerto Rico. I was in the Navy three years. I was on a kiddie cruise, abbreviated kiddie cruise, 3 years, and I got out in 1954. Well, I'm the classic that says, you know, in the old days we had to do this and do that. And I lived for 2 years with my aunt and uncle, like I mentioned. I was 15 at the time. In northern Minnesota. And in northern Minnesota, where they lived, was a resort on a lake. Ideal place in the summer. And the summer lasted about 3 months. And the rest of it was cold. And unfortunately, November we had a lightning storm, which is highly unusual in November in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and the house burned to the ground. My aunt was hurt. She had a badly cut leg, and I, with a tractor and some water jugs, saved the shed where our tools were, but the house was a total loss. All we had was, I had none of the clothes that I'd bought to prepare for the school year. They were gone. My aunt and uncle lost everything, guns and everything. Because when something like that happens, you do some stupid things. Later on, you think, why did I do this and why did I do that? You do whatever's at hand, apparently. And I spent probably 3 or 4 minutes trying to push a mattress out the front door. I don't know what earthly good that mattress would have done, but I think it was in the way, so I was trying to get it. But it was just it was a crazy situation, and I spent that winter in a winterized cabin, winterized with sawdust, a cabin that was not designed for winter, designed for summer fishermen. Right. And our heating was one of these little log stoves, and we had no electricity. There was no electricity in those days. Our REA hadn't reached there yet. And so it was probably the most miserable winter. And one of the reasons I don't care if I ever go back to Minnesota. I've seen 54 below zero that winter. And it was so cold, trees cracked, split wide open. It was that cold. Even the little sap that remained. I mean, it was one of the worst winters I had in something like 30 years. And it had to be the winter that we were living in a cabin, of course. But I went to high school, very large high school. There was 9 guys in the senior class. No, I take it back. There was 9 in the junior class, and I think there was 5 in the senior class. It was in a town called Reamer, Minnesota. Okay, so my morning or my school day involved getting up at about 5 or 5:15 and lighting off the log fire, because I was the first one up, and getting some heat anyways. And my aunt would get up and of course fix me breakfast. Then I would hike a mile to catch the bus, the school bus. And then it was 16 miles to school. And we'd pick up along the highway, we'd pick up various kids along the way. And I had some great friendships. We had, even with that type of a situation, we had some good close friendships. And we had a lot of fun. I mean, it sounds strange today, but we had a lot of fun. And even when the snow got 4 feet deep, you know, if the plow could get out on the road and allow the school bus, fine. If it didn't, we didn't go. And several times we were at basketball games during the winter, and by the time we got back, the snow was so heavy we had to sleep in the school gymnasium. That was it. I mean, there was no way to get home. So it was, you know, it was an interesting time. I was a city kid, of course. I'd been raised in the city. That made me the smart aleck, you know, of the group. You know, these are all kids that grew up in the country. So, but they couldn't be left behind. All right, they were good kids. A friend of mine, Dwayne Todd, he used to stay at my house, and I'd stay at his house. One of those deals. He lived halfway between where I lived and the school. So once in a while, I'd stop at him, stay with him for the night. And other times, you know, it was just one of these. And we got this bug that we were sick and tired of the girls all wearing jeans and Levi's. So we get this idea, we're going to school dressed as women, with dresses. So he conned his mother into letting us have 2 dresses. And it's a shame we didn't have video in those days, because it would have been great. And we got on the bus that morning, and everybody's having it was hilarious. We got into school, and we had this one old teacher. His name was Kreinbrenner. He was an old man. He had 3 hairs sticking out of the top of his bald head, and he had great big ears, glasses, and no teeth. Half the time he'd take his teeth out. And he saw us coming in the door, and I don't know what he thought was going on. But we won our case, believe it or not. And we told him, they called us in. I mean, we called us into the principal's office, 2 of us, and asked us what we thought we were doing. We're trying to be smart alecks or what? No, we were just trying to make a statement. And that was a statement we made. And believe it or not, some of the girls said, you know, maybe they're right. Of course, in the winter, it was a different story. This didn't happen to me in the winter. This was springtime, I think it was. So, and we had some pretty good-looking girls up there in the hills too.
Then you were, you know, bucking the system.
Oh well, yeah, well, and you know, it was a hard time but fun time. That's the only way I could describe it. It's something I'll never forget. I took the family back there once because they'd heard me tell about going in the snow and the snowshoes and hanging those in the bus and all that. And naturally, they didn't believe me. So I took them up in northern Minnesota, and we visited my aunt, and I took them on the road to show them just exactly what it was like going to school. As much as they complained. Right, they complained, oh, I got to walk 3 blocks to school? Oh, isn't that terrible? Of course, when I'd tell them, hey, going through snowbanks and all, well, you know, that's one of those old stories. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't a story, it was true. It was really true. My Uncle George, he was an alcoholic. He was a classic alcoholic of all times. He was a man that, in 1936, they said he wouldn't live beyond another 3 years. Well, he lasted 25, I think. My poor aunt had to put up with that for all those years. And George was basically the laziest man ever on the face of this earth. And my aunt was German bred. Her mother was from Germany. Kuhn was her name. And she was a hard-working German. Saved her money, man. She'd never throw away a bent nail, straighten it out, man. Use it. And I mean, it's frugal. We built a new house out of part of an old schoolhouse they tore down, and that's the only way we could afford it. I mean, it was we built that house, or I helped. I was only 15, with 2 old carpenters. One was a guy named Jack Houghton. He was a carpenter. He could make kitchen cabinets out of orange crates. That's how good. I mean, he was good. And the other one was a guy named Maxie Krause, and he was a bachelor. And funny little guy. And he was a First World War veteran. He lived all himself up there in the woods. But he was what you'd call a rough carpenter. When you wanted a fence put up or something like that, was Maxie. Well, these 2 guys, one was a finished carpenter and the other guy was a rough carpenter. It was hilarious. But I learned a lot. And you got to remember, I just said there was no electricity. We're talking handsaw, everything. Oh yeah, everything. 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 Not everyone went in the Navy as I did. A lot of them, their only purpose in joining the Navy was so they wouldn't have to go in the Army, okay? And some of them, the biggest complainers we heard were the guys from the South that ended up in Great Lakes in January, February, and March. And, you know, that's really justified. Really justified. Most of them were from Texas, and it was really rough on those guys, and I felt pretty good. And boot camp was boot camp. It was an experience that I made some friendships, but not really close with any of them. It was just because we all went different directions. After boot camp, there was no big group that went any particular direction. Ended up in San Diego, and we put an old DE that had been mothballed on a national city into commission, and that was our job to scrape plastic off gun mounts, because I attached myself to the gunners. I wanted to strike. I didn't want to be bosun mate because I saw what the bosun mates were doing to the kids, and so I struck with for the gunners mates and worked on a mount. My mount was an after 5-inch on a DE, DE 351, Maurice J. Manuel, named after a Marine. Fortunate, I was really fortunate because we, as a group of raw butt recruits, all of our petty officers were Second World War veterans, all of them. And they'd all been recalled. And they were not a happy bunch of campers. But I have this to say, they were professionals. I mean, they were guys that had been there and done that, and they didn't have to talk about it and brag about it. They had been there and done that. Most of them were South Pacific veterans. Some of them had some real wartime experiences too. But we could learn a lot in a short period of time from these guys. Really good, really good. It was a good experience for me. We crossed the Pacific in a hurry and left in a hurry. We were off the coast when we lost 2 minesweepers. One was called a Snow. The Koreans were dumping magnetic mines, and we're in a tin hull DE. They said, well, I don't think we need you here anymore, because all we were doing was figure 8 mines, submarines. And they didn't have any submarines anyway, so why we're even there is beyond me. So we came back, and we came back to going across. We went to Hunters Point, and then across, and came back to San Diego. San Diego, we went down through the ditch, went to the Atlantic Fleet. So we ended up in Newport, Rhode Island. That was our home port when it used to be Torpedo Island. We were tied up in Torpedo Island. So, and operations in the Caribbean and all that. Figure 8s. We had an excellent record. We had a real lieutenant commander that was real.
Was he skipper?
He was a Romeo, man. He had one every port. Every time we said there's that car sitting there with a good-looking gal in it, man, he was our guy. His engineering officer was a reserve, reserve lieutenant, and the two of them used to go out together. And our captain, of course, he wasn't Annapolis, but he was regular Navy, and the engineering officer was a reserve, and they always had their little thing. Yeah, it was fun because, oh, there was some experiences that were crazy. You get a bunch of older petty officers, and a crew with half the officers were reserves. I mean, it was a great ship though. It was a great ship. We'd take over. Of course, I was younger. I didn't take it over, but we had a bar in National City called Merle's Place, and if you weren't off our ship or had been invited in by someone off our ship when we were in port, I mean, behave yourself. Marines found that out from Pendleton. They found out one day. They found out we better not mess with these guys. I don't remember where it was, frankly. I know there was a couple of good fights there. The same thing happened in the Atlantic. We, of course, never stayed in Newport. Newport was nothing. We went to Fall River, and there was a bar there called the Narragansett Bar, right on the. I think there was a square there, kind of a square, in the Narragansett Bar, and that was the ship's bar when we were in Newport. Yeah, I mean they always met. If you need to ride back to the ship or something, that's where you went. And it was a camaraderie. That was very, very good. I hated to leave the ship. We ended up on the Marine Railway in Charlestown, Massachusetts. And we're on the Marine Railway, no steam heat on a ship, and a bulletin came through, whatever they call it, for volunteers for the Caribbean. There was two from each destroyer in our squadron. And I asked the guys, what do you think? I asked my petty officer, what do you think? He said, look, the captain's leaving in another 3 months, and we don't know what we're going to get now. So he said, if I had a chance to go to Puerto Rico, I'd go in a minute. So boom, I went. And I got it. I was one of two guys they selected, a kid named Gunderson and me. So I ended up in Puerto Rico at a naval radio station, CSA station called Sabana Seca. But they were disbanding a previous station called Carolina, Naval Station Carolina. Now Carolina was on one side of Santurce, and Sabana Seca was on the other side, quite a ways, about 14, I think it was 14 miles out there. And when we arrived there, we were told we were going to be the skeleton crew at this Carolina radio station until everything's shut down and, they get everything cut down and they get the new barracks done out of Sabana Seca. So here we are. There was 15 of us and a chief that had a little bit of a drinking problem, Chief Wink, Chief Commissary Steward, which aren't known for their military discipline anyway. And I could write a book on the stuff that went on in that place. Eventually ended up in Sabana Seca, and that good friends. We had some good friends there. I was actually in a hospital at the time I met her. She came with a friend of hers, Vera McQuaid, who was married to a friend of mine, Paul McQuaid, he's a bosun mate. And I saw her, and looked about my size, nice legs. And it was kind of a blind date situation. A month or so later, Paul asked me if I wanted to go out with Billy, and we did. And 3 months later, we're married, so. I mean, don't mess around. I mean, Bill Gay was a yeoman for Captain Patterson, who was the commander of the base, a naval base in San Juan. And he, being a yeoman's driver, being a yeoman and the driver of the captain, was in on a lot of the conversations that took place in the back seat concerning my officer in charge in Sabana Seca, who was a real ding-a-ling. I mean, this guy was absolutely the most worthless ONC that I can ever recall, even reading about. He was that bad. We were regular Navy, and the girls, we call them the girls, were the CSA, the communications experts. I mean, they were all. I was top secret classified also, because I did a lot of the messengering back and forth between our outlying communications center, which was called Building 40. It was about 3 miles from the main base, all secret, big fences and all that stuff. So I was messenger at a time, taking stuff back and forth, which probably was what's on the menu for tomorrow, Of course, at that time, it was, remember, we're just after Korea. The Russians were raising all kinds of dickens, so it was at a time where you had to be careful, that's all. Wow. Security-wise, We got married in '53, and as soon as I was discharged from the Navy in February February of '54, we went to California, where my dad had moved. During the time I was in the service, he had moved out there and met a gal named Alice, real nice person. And he was doing well. He was working for a bread company out there. And we went to California. I got a job at Lockheed Aircraft and template maker. I didn't know what a template maker was, but I soon found out. And it was a good job. It was a nice job. I liked it. My daughter Vanya was born July the 1st, and I was laid off on July the 8th. Real nice, you know, because I lost the contract, and that's the way things went in those days. So I didn't have many alternatives. Jobs weren't that easy to find. So I went back to Puerto Rico. We moved back to Puerto Rico. And I spent almost 2 years there. I went to school, vocational school, refrigeration, air conditioning. I was the only English-speaking student in the school. But because I was working with her father, who was air conditioning engineer for many years, I ended up finishing the school in, I think it was 11 months. And I was teaching the centrifugal refrigeration to the teacher. I guess that's what I was working on all day long. I went to school nights and studied in the daytime. So finally, I really didn't want to stay there anymore in Puerto Rico. And so we went back to California. I got a job back, template maker at Lockheed, right away. That's when Tad was born. My son was born. And so they were both born in North Hollywood, California.
Wow.
So at Lockheed, I did very well. I really liked it too. It was all mathematics and geometry and stuff like that. A lot of math that I never in the world thought I'd ever use. You got to marry the right woman to start with, because I've often thought, well, if I'd married that one, or if I'd married that one, not anymore, because I mean, it's gone. What would I be doing now? Well, I had a girlfriend up in North Woods, Minnesota. I'd probably be out working at some REA lumbing crew, living in a mobile home. And the other one in Minneapolis, I don't know what would have done there. I just, you know, you can't project that kind of a thing. But you have to have someone like my wife that can put up with a multitude of indiscretions, plus being a full-blown alcoholic. Yeah, I had a drinking problem. I think as I go back, and I've given my testimony many times at AA. The longer you're in the program, the longer you realize that you drank alcoholically. I can remember drinking alcoholically when I was 15 years old, stealing a case of beer and drinking it with my buddies. But I drank until smashed. It didn't happen often then, for the simple reason it wasn't available. I remember even in the service, in the Navy, I had several times I got drunk until you're drunk. And here again, availability. And you're in the service, I mean, you didn't make enough money to start with. You couldn't do much.
Right.
But later on, I was successful as a contractor, and it was very seldom I drank. I had a lot of responsibility. I was working hard and supporting my family and trying to buy a home down in Puerto Rico and this thing. And once in a while I got drunk, yeah. As the years went by, and my business knowledge increased, and I had a good reputation and this thing and that thing, and I found excuses to go out with guys that like to drink like I did. Yeah, kind of typical story. I mean, nothing unusual about it at all. And every time I got to a point where I was really getting serious problem, I would change positions in different companies. I was a sales manager, and then I was a general manager, and I was executive vice president, and you know, all these kind of things over the years. And I'd always leave before it really caused a problem. Then I'd go on to something else and then have a period of progress. But eventually, it caught up to me in 1971, basically, when I really got bad. I was bad. I was traveling overseas at that time too, so I could drink over there, and not, you know. And the only regrets I have of the whole situation of starting it to begin with, obviously you always have regrets. But what I put my wife through for several years, and she had to be the kind of woman she is to stand by while all this monkey business is going on, you know. Finally, in 1972, March the 13th, I hit the wall. I had been going to AA before that. Some friends of mine, some friends that I had met in business, they took me occasionally to AA meetings or tried to get me to go on a regular basis, but I was drinking between meetings, you know. That's kind of typical too. I've helped other people over the years, you know, you conning. You know, I had nothing in common with it. I was only 39 years old, and these guys were all 50s and 60s, you know. So I had really no, I couldn't identify with them. Until one day I was in my favorite bar, the Mousetrap on Biscayne Boulevard in Miami. And this was my place. I mean, they knew me coming in. They could see my silhouette coming in the front door. They had a double martini and a rock sitting on the bar. That's the way it was. And I had probably 3 or 4 that day. And it had no effect whatsoever. And you talk about something scary. When you've been drinking for effect that long, and you drink 3 doubles, and nothing, absolutely nothing happens. It scared the daylights out of me. And I went home that night, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. Belen couldn't figure out what was going on. I came home relatively. She could tell I'd been drinking, but I wasn't drunk. And I laid awake all night long. And finally, in the morning, I said, that's it, that's enough. I haven't had a drink since. But I went back for the right reasons, and it was a total change. So I've been sober 34 years now. And I hadn't had the slightest drink. I see other people drinking them, it doesn't bother me. Everybody says, oh, geez, I gotta stay away from that now. Some people do. I never have. I never have. And because I was in business, even after I got sober now, in business, I had to meet people and had to travel and all this. And don't say the temptation wasn't there, because it was there. But I was smart enough to stay away from those situations for the first year, as I was told. I did everything I was told. I didn't do anything on my own. I was a dummy. And that was a situation that basically turned my life around a bit. For as far as the family is concerned, she was always afraid, you know, for a long, long time. She was afraid I was going to have a slip. Of course, I never did. Because all of this trust that you'd lost over all these years, you had to retrain her into the fact that you're not drinking anymore. That's all. It takes a long time. Actually, it's harder on a wife than it ever is on a man, or vice versa, whoever's doing the drinking. I remember someone saying one time, and he walked in with his wife into a club room. He said, my name is Sam, this is my wife, she's got the problem. You know, yeah, I mean, pretty true. We've had our difficulties over the years. Most people today, or young people, make several mistakes. And it has nothing to do with how long they went together, how long they lived together before they got married. Absolutely nothing to do with that. You have to be compatible. You have to have, your interests don't have to be identical, but they should complement each other, okay? I was fortunate enough to marry a good cook, and I love to eat, so we're compatible.
There you
okay?
go, that's right.
We're compatible, and a person that can live with your failings, okay? And so many young people that get divorced today, like they don't give it a real chance. finding something new to sack out with. Basically, most of the problems are caused by that. Most of your military divorces are the same reason. I mean, she can't stay away from it for, you know, while he's on deployment. Of course, they don't realize a lot of times the guy's out on a ship someplace, and you know what? You know, it's not that he is chaste by choice. He's chaste by necessity. A lot of them don't. They just don't realize it. They don't realize. They say, "Wow, you got to be over there. You got to be cheating," you know. And the only thing I've learned over the years, over the past few years, basically more than previous, was it's better left unsaid. You know, the biggest problem you can get into is starting an argument. By starting an argument, you're answering a statement, and then it just escalates from there. And the first thing you know, you're not talking to each other for 2-3 days, and you know that gets nowhere. That gets nowhere. It says in the Bible, "Don't go to sleep. Don't go to bed with animosity in your heart." So you know, towards anything really. My wife is a very strong Christian, so I get kind of the fallout from her. But thank God, because otherwise, you know, it's we've had our ups and we've had our downs, and we've had our trials and tribulations, not only from actions, but from things that have happened in my business life. And I was in several positions, of pretty good positions, and blew up on me. Partly my decisions, and partly I was probably associated with the wrong people. Not gangsters or anything, but people that were not as honest with me as I was with them. Okay, and as a result, I had a varied career, but always respected by people, especially in the Caribbean, because that's basically where I had a lot of engineering know-how, and people respected me for that, even though I was never a graduate engineer. I was used by architects and engineers to write their specifications and do most of their design work, because mine was a school of practical knowledge, which is really the best kind you can have. Otherwise, I have no regrets. I have no regrets. I myself had a heart attack 25 years ago, and mine was a heart attack that I was aware of immediately what it was, even though I had no prior indications. But it was such a painful thing that I just, you know, you don't want to even think. I don't even want to think about it, because it was that scary. And I died. Okay, I died on the way in the ambulance on the way to. And I'm alive because she and a neighbor were praying for me on the way to the hospital. But her heart attack was like most women. They don't have an attack in the heart. The pain isn't from the heart. The pain is other areas. And she had been complaining about her arms being sore and her neck and like you would have if you had a slipped disc, that kind of a pain, and it would go away. And this went on for a couple of weeks. It would go away, and then the next day she'd have another one of these episodes, and she'd lay down for 15-20 minutes, and everything all right. But we were at Jason's house helping him get some stuff packed up. He's ready to go to Newport, and it hit her again, and she was sitting in a chair in Jason's house, and it didn't go away. And thank God Jason was there, because if I'd have told her we got to call 911, I would have had an argument. But Jason put his foot down and said, no, we got to do it. So we called 911, and it was a scary situation. We took her in, and I sat in the front of the ambulance. We took her into Virginia Beach Hospital, and took her emergency, and they said that she is now having a heart attack. So they had to go in, and they operated that night, and they botched the insertion of the tube in here. I'm not saying they botched it. It was just something went wrong, and she was bleeding. She was bleeding badly in this area of her groin area. She had a big ball of blood in there under the, in the meat. So they had to take her in a second time and get that straightened out, and give her transfusions and the rest of it. So I look at it from a different. I look at it from a positive point of view. I know she's a strong will. I know the Lord's got His hand on her. So honestly, I was not concerned with her dying, because I know where her faith is, and even if she had, I still know where she's going. Okay, so that's basically what you think about when these things happen, and of course, I had Jason there, and they were there supporting me, and Aaron came, and then Josh was on the beach. He was at a wine tasting thing, and he showed up too. So I had family support there, and it made it a little easier. And she came out of it good. She had good tests now recently, and it was a strange thing. Or she doesn't have any high blood pressure, no high blood pressure. The only thing that could have caused it was the doctor said a stress and basically an imperfection in one of the veins going into her heart. It was the only one that was not. This one was the only one clogged, and it wasn't a question of cholesterol. It was just defect. So they put a shunt in her, and now she's doing well. She's tired though. She tires out. In the afternoon, she usually takes. She never did that before. Never. She's always no. She. So that situation, she's going to be fine. It's going to take 6-7 months before she's going to be back to where she wants to be. And because I remember that distinctly in my own case, the same situation. People don't realize what a heart attack does to you. I mean, it knocks you down. I know what she is going through now, and a lot of depression involved too. Yeah. Depression because you're frustrated. You can't do this. You can't do that. And it's but she's gonna be fine. It's a good idea too for us to get back there close to Vanya. We'd thought about it before anyway, as you know, when Aaron gets out, whatever, they're going to sell this. And then we were going back there anyways. We have a lot of friends there. Right. And our purpose in coming here was Corbin. And that was really our only purpose, you know. Yeah. So, and now that responsibility is done. So, guys, since we've been married, we've been taking people in and setting them on their feet and sending them on their way. And because some of these kids that we've taken in when they were, real big trouble. Sleeping on the floor down in Puerto Rico. The house was padlocked because their father went, we took them into our house and gave them a job and, fixed them all up. I don't want any medals. But they could, once a year, call my wife and say, we really appreciate what you did for us. Yeah. And not at her funeral, because that doesn't count. You know what I mean? That's for a lot of people. It's really important, I think, that you recognize people in your life that were instrumental in either changing actually your life or changing your thought processes. I remember people distinctly, especially since I got into AA in '72. There's people I can focus on, individual people that were just fantastic in my recovery, okay? And people who really were instrumental in my life, both from drinking and other things too. Everyone needs mentors, and you have to be real selective on a mentor. And it's not always the mentor that you like. It's usually your best mentors are those that are going to criticize you, to build you up and tell you not what you want to hear, but what you should hear. That's a good mentor. A mentor is going to be your buddy. I don't want to, what do you want to do? Identify with somebody that's just like you? No, that's where my problem started to begin with. You know what I mean? Yeah. Who's this? If you want advice, I'm always good at giving advice. I think today it's important for families to stick together. Not that it has to be on a everyday basis or twice a week basis, but on a basis where they're really conversant with each other. Family is family. And having come from such a busted up mess of a family myself, I have more of an appreciation for it than most people. We take a lot of our family for granted, good and bad, okay? And it's important to keep these ties together because we have information, each one of us, that is the whole story. It's like my own. I was talking to Aaron the other day that, you know, I'm the last one that knows a lot of our family history. I'm the last one because my mother's gone. They're all gone. I only have one uncle left alive, and he's in his upper 80s, and he doesn't know what I know. And then also he doesn't know my mother's side of the family. He knows my father's side of the family. He's his brother. But it's important that we go back into that to find out where we came from. Really, it's where we came from. And what have you got to brag about in your family tree? Yeah, hey, it's important. It's important. I don't use it to get extra food or extra discount at the supermarket, but it's nice to know that somebody back in our family tree was worth something, you know.
Right.
And they weren't all, like my Uncle George, a perpetual drunk or full-blown, or the divorces, multiple divorces in my own family. My brother was divorced 3 times. My other brother was divorced 3 times. My dad was divorced 3 times. You know, that's nothing. Well, I'd rather not leave that in the family album. Yeah, this is my dad's first wife, my second wife, and the third wife. You know what I mean? And then you go to your son, and I'm the only one that's been married once. The only one. Now here I got a grandson. 1, 2, 3. 3 strikes, you're out, baby. All that is really important. I started going back into the family tree, not family tree. I don't like the word tree. Our ancestry. You know? And I've had help by one of my mother's aunts who passed away long ago, but she made a real extensive search. And we go all the way back on that side of the family, all the way back to England. And my grandfather, his family from Sweden, he came over to this country 12 years old. And I've checked all through Ellis Island. And I mean, if more kids would do this, they really find it really fascinating. One of the tragedies we have facing us in the years to come, there's no written word. Computers is not the written word. And when these things are lost, they're lost. I look at old people reading through letters that were sent to them 30 and 40 and 50 years ago, and things that they find in attics today that are just so fascinating. So fascinating. And now we have this computer that has all of this stuff on a CD. That somebody's going to erase it. It's gone. You know how much reading I do? You know when I read? During the commercials. I watch TV, but 20 minutes out of every hour is commercials. There's 20 minutes I can be reading. My wife gets upset with me because I read Tom Clancy. I read all of his books at least twice. All of them. I got them all. You know why? Because I respect good writing. And writing that isn't full of, you know, all the garbage. The soap opera stuff that has some meat to it. Yeah. But reading is something that kids today don't do. It's really a tragedy. Some great books. You ever read The Count of Monte Cristo? Count of Monte Cristo is a great book. Great book. And I've read that I don't know how many times. In fact, mine has fallen apart. It's that old, big old book that thick. And if you can read like that, you can also write like that. Okay? My wife saves some of the things the cards that she's gotten over the years that people have written things inside. You know, that's when you're feeling down or something, go through some of that old stuff, and especially if you happen to be a sentimental type person. It's nice to do that. See these, oh geez, I'm going into combat for 6 months. I'm in deployment for 6 months. My God, my old man was out 2.5 years in the South Pacific. Huh? He was home on 1 leave. When the stupid ship got the New Orleans had the bow blown off, he came home on leave, and he's got a wife and 2 kids. And here these guys, oh, we got to go to Bahrain for 6 months. And give me a break. On email, and on video, and on emails. And, oh, what is this? I think it would be really refreshing to find a politician that was really and honestly a statesman that was willing to go in and spend his or not 5 years, either 4 years or 6 years, and go home. Clancy's got a book on that very thing where Congress is wiped out, the Supreme Court is wiped out, and he rebuilds the government. He said, don't send me any politicians, and don't send me any lawyers. Send me doctors, send me teachers, send me engineers, send me this. This is what this country was founded on. And our country is, I think we're basically in trouble. What's going to wake us up? I don't know. I think we're in a very similar situation we were just before the Second World War started. We see all these things happening. We see Poland being invaded. Blah, 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 blah. Basically, the Second World War didn't start with Hitler invading Poland. The Second World War started with the Japanese invading China in 1936. Of course, how many people know that? And then before that, of course, Hitler taking over the Reichstag in Germany. But the attitude of most Americans before Pearl Harbor was, how can we impeach Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Because he is sending ships over to England, and without congressional approval, ba 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 ba. And there was marches, there was riots in New York City about it. And when December 7th happened, that was the end of that. People finally woke up. But it took a long, so we're in the same situation. Right now, people are not, what is it, a Pollyanna world? I mean, everything's fine, and that's over there, not here. And you have such manipulation by the media, of course. Well, Rush calls them their drive-by media. I kind of agree with them. There's things I disagree with Rush too, you know, whatever. But I've been in these areas of the world where explosions have taken place. Nicaragua, Panama, of course. I was with one of the instigators of the revolution in the Dominican Republic when they killed Trujillo. All right, they didn't kill Trujillo. It was after that. The night before it happened in Santo Domingo, and these kind of things, you could smell it in the air. And why the American embassy letter said, we had no indication that anything was going to happen here. I was visiting customers there. His name was Hector Aristi. Okay, he was an entrepreneur. He had a company that they moved Frigidaire from Puerto Rico to Dominican Republic to make small refrigerators, 7 cubic foot, 10 cubic foot, because Puerto Ricans could buy a 20 cubic footer from Sears. So they moved this factory, and I was over there to help them set up this factory. Plus another job was with a big chocolate company. And this Hector Aristi is real. You remember a name, Porfirio Rubirosa? He was Zsa Zsa Gabor's lover way back. I mean, I'm going back. He was a Latin lover boy, Dominican, classy guy. Well, this guy was like him. And Hector Aristi invited me one night to go to see Olga Guillot, who I'm sure you've heard of. And we're at the Embajador, and out in the patio, and you're drinking. I was drinking those days. And he said, when are you going back? And I said, well, it was Thursday. I said, I want to take tomorrow and buy some stuff for the kids, and, you know, all this souvenirs and stuff. Buy some stuff for the kids, and Belaine wants me to pick up some material of some kind or another. He says, when are you planning on going back? I said, well, I'm going back Saturday morning. He says, go tomorrow. I said, no, I said, I want to go out, do a little shopping tomorrow. He says, go tomorrow. So about the third time he said, go tomorrow, I said, uh-oh. Because you could, it was like an ambiance. You could almost smell it. So I did. And the next, well, that night, I'm sorry, the next morning, I called Hector Aristi, Ignacio Cortez, who was the owner of this chocolate factory, who I was helping with some stuff. I said, Ignacio, I'm going back to Puerto Rico tomorrow. What for? Blah, blah, blah. You know, nice guy, nice man, real nice man. I said, well, I've been told that you're going to have some problems here, and I'm leaving. I'm leaving in the morning. Oh, no, no, I've been coming here for 25 years, and I never had the slightest problem. Well, so I go to the airport, and I'm back in Puerto Rico. Booms, Saturday. Bombs, all this stuff going on. My wife has cousins that live there, right outside the Empire Hotel. And we're concerned about them, you know, where they're going to. The boxer comes in, the boxer, the carrier of the boxer. They bring in all the troops to go in there. They go in at the wrong time. There's a famous general, a great Dominican hero and patriot, Weston and Weston is his name. And he had this Camano and his gang in what they call the New City, the old, on the other side of the Duarte Bridge. And they're ready to go across this bridge and kick butt, okay? Here comes the American troops to divide them. You know, peacekeepers, and everybody's saying, "Oh, man, let him go!" Weston and Weston go. He clean these communists. Camano was a communist through and through, and he was backed by Fidel Castro. So here they come in, and they go in there and they mess everything up. 3 days later, they have a live broadcast TV from the Dominican Republic on Puerto Rican TV, and they show Camano there. And they'd captured this Jeep with 3 American soldiers in it that made a left instead of a right, and they got nailed. And they had them on live TV. And here's these three doggies stand, and here's Camano with his, you know, his metralladora, you know. And next to him, Hector Aristi. I said, oh my God. Yeah. A week later, I get a call from Ignacio Cortez, the chocolate guy. He evacuated on the boxer. He says, how in the hell do you know so much? And I lived there for 25 years back in. Anyway, these stories, you know. But the point of the whole situation, here's a friend of ours, extremely good friend of ours, an embassy there, a consulate, that are supposed to be aware about everything that's going on. They came on the same guy that ended up in Vietnam, in Saigon, the same ambassador. What was his name? The same guy anyways. He made a fool of himself in Saigon too. Okay, same guy. But, oh, we had no indication this was going to happen. The American troops that are tearing up the hotel there, had Agua Hotel. Anyways, the whole thing being intimately aware of things going on, you wonder, who are these people we've got in charge? I mean, what are they being paid for? Their whole purpose in life, to me, is how can I get more people to control under me, power, and how can I perpetuate my position here? That's all. They don't care if this country goes down to 2. I don't think they do.
It's about power, I think.
But that's just, you know, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, being a grandfather of a famous photographer, an admiral, a doctor, at least a captain, Tatiana, who's a TV, a film editor and director, who's Jacob. He's really into it. He's making his own movies. That's what I want. It's not me. It's what came out of our family. That's what's important to me. It always has been. My son has got a reputation all over Central South America as being a good man. That's important to me. Vanya, she gives my daughter. No one knows, okay, how much she gives. You know what we're going to do when we get back? We're making Thanksgiving dinner for Teen Challenge. Okay, we used to do it years ago, and we found out there's a new Teen Challenge just opened there with all these kids in trouble. Okay, so we're going down there to help Vanya make Thanksgiving dinner for them. But that's what we want to be remembered at. We got a note from a good friend of ours that still lives in Wildwood, Florida. She sent us a article in the paper how the soup kitchen that my wife and another woman started, how many years ago, 12 years ago now, They served last month 4,300 meals out of that kitchen that they started. That's something to be. My mother, she was instrumental in fixing all the garden area around the old folks' home there in Wildwood. Those are the kind of things that people once in a while say, "Hey, remember so?" That's important. But basically, it's the kids that are important to me. Here again, some of them had their problems, but basically, I think they're all good people. I think of my brothers. He's got one boy that's all messed up. Another one's in prison, and just count our blessings. We haven't had any kind of a problem of that type. And they're all personable people. They don't. None of them are nasty to the best of my knowledge, except me. Because they're all. We've always managed to stay close to the younger people. Also, both Melanie and I both. I don't want to hang around old people. Basically, I don't. We have nothing in common. We have no conversation. They're talking about Social Security, you know. And I see my kids once a year when they come down from Philadelphia, or we live in Florida now because we just don't want to mess with our grandkids. I mean, what is this? I have nothing. There's nothing we have in common. For me, it's back to the families. I remember our family reunion, Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're always at my grandmother's house, and Easter, usually on Easter too. That was when everybody got together, even if you disliked one to the other. and that was it. My grandfather died when I was 4 years old. He died in 1937. Worked himself to death. He had 7 kids to support during the Depression. That takes some doing, buddy. So I remember those family reunions as being extremely important. For me, it was important because this is my uncle this, and this is my aunt. And even though they had their separate problems, at least at one time of the year we got together as a family. And today I can look back and criticize some of the things that happened, like my 2 brothers should never have been put into foster homes. They should have been, one of my uncles should have taken over that responsibility. I would have, in a minute, in a heartbeat. Right. But, you know, I'm not gonna take their inventory. There's somebody up there who's going to take your inventory someday. So I don't worry about it.
What is your future?
I'm going back down to Georgia, and me and my wife, and I want to do a little more traveling. We're going to be able to do it, and also Vanya will be able to also be with Jason and Melissa in Jacksonville. And I'd like to get down and see my son more often. We couldn't do it here because of all the animals. We have 3 cats and a dog, and you can't get away like you would like to. But now with us living there, Vanya, we can take care of Vanya's when they're gone, and she can take care of ours when we're gone. So it'll be nice. And there's people that we haven't seen in several years. Every time we go to South Florida, it's shooting through, and we're passing by people that would really love to see us, and we'd love to see them, but we just don't have the time. So now we're gonna do that. In fact, we're going down after Thanksgiving, and spend a week or so with Ted. We always go and have a project. And we're going to pick the garden area and, do things. And that's what we do. We do that together. I don't know what we do if we were separated from the grandkids. I think it's really important, especially for Melanie and both of us, basically. We're going to go to Tatiana's graduation. That's next year. In Annapolis, and that's going to be a big deal for us, for me especially. Remember, I was a scumbag gunner's mate. And I got one of the first class, should have been chief warrant by now, but that's his thing. He didn't want it. But I got Jason as a full lieutenant, and he'll be at least captain. I know that. It's no question, hands down. And Tati, sky's the limit on her. I don't know. Annapolis graduate, she don't have to worry anything the rest of her life. She graduates. Nothing. They've all got their none of them are bumps. real specter in the hospital, but when he gets out, he's gonna make some bucks. He's what he knows. They don't appreciate it now, but when they get out, they're gonna find out how many people can walk into a clinic that deals with allergies and know all of it. Doctors are gonna be chomping at the bit. So I've been talking about it, because he wants to get out. And I don't blame him. If I've been stuck in the same place for 4 years, I'd get out too. Yeah. They screwed up. They screwed up. Yes, yes, yes.
No.
Do you hear that? That's another thing you have to always learn.